Welcome to the art class.
Have you ever lied to your doctor?
Well, hopefully not outright lied, but yeah.
Right. Or, if not an outright lie, maybe you conveniently left out a crucial detail about your lifestyle. Like, maybe you had a few too many drinks over the weekend.
Right.
Or you take a daily supplement you just didn't think was worth mentioning. Or perhaps you're carrying a level of sheer, overwhelming stress that you just wanted to keep to yourself out of pride.
Which happens a lot, honestly.
Exactly. Well, today we're going to show you exactly why you should never, ever do that. Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating stack of sources in front of us today that essentially act as a 500-year-old medical cold case.
Yeah, it really is.
Our mission is to investigate how the most famous artist of the Renaissance was accidentally killed by the absolute best medical care the 16th century had to offer.
It's a perfect storm, really. I mean, it's history, art, and biology all crashing together. When you look at the source material we're diving into today, you quickly realize this isn't just a dry art history lesson about, paint on a canvas.
Definitely not.
It is a very dark, very real medical thriller, and it's one that actually still echoes in modern hospitals today.
To put the stakes into perspective for you, the listener, I want you to imagine a modern scenario. Picture a massively famous tech billionaire.
Okay.
Or maybe the biggest pop star on the planet right now, right at the peak of a record-breaking world tour. And suddenly, they fall mildly ill. Nothing visibly catastrophic, just a severe fever.
Right, just a sudden illness.
Right, and the President of the United States hears about this illness and immediately dispatches the nation's absolute top-tier, most credentialed doctors to treat them. And then those specific, highly trained doctors are the exact reason the patient dies.
What's fascinating here is that this isn't just a story about art or fame or even wealth. It's really a story about the profound danger of medical consensus.
Yeah.
It's about the limits of human knowledge and the very real, sometimes fatal cost of what happens when we withhold the truth from those who are actively trying to save our lives.
Before we can truly understand the tragedy of this man's death, we have to start by establishing exactly who it is that died. Because Raphael wasn't just like a guy standing alone in a room with a paintbrush.
No, not at all.
To understand why the Pope felt compelled to send his personal medical A-team, you have to understand the sheer, almost unsustainable magnitude of Raphael's life at that exact moment.
Right.
So let's look at his background. Who was this guy before he became the golden boy of Rome?
Well, his life started with a bizarre mix of incredible privilege and profound tragedy. He was born in 1483 in a small, highly influential city in central Italy called Urbino.
Okay.
And his father was actually a court painter. That is a massive advantage for a young artist. Raphael literally grew up inside the bustling workshop.
Just surrounded by it from day one.
Exactly. From day one, he was surrounded by the raw pigments, the drafting tools, and just as importantly, he was absorbing the complicated, cutthroat politics of artistic patronage. He learned how to talk to rich and powerful people very early on.
But that safety net vanishes pretty quickly, doesn't it? I mean, looking at the sources, he loses both of his parents before he even turns 12. He's entirely orphaned as a child.
He is, yeah. So to keep his training going, he gets sent to study under a very respected worktop master named Perugino. And this is where the genius really starts to show.
He's a fast learner.
Oh, incredibly fast.
Right.
Raphael doesn't just learn the techniques, he absorbs information at a terrifying rate. Contemporaries noted that he was outpacing his master incredibly quickly.
Wow.
By his early 20s, he is already surpassing the man who was supposed to be teaching him the trade. He was just a sponge for technique.
That rapid rise sets up the defining moment of his career, right? He's just 25 years old, and he gets a direct summons from Pope Julius II.
Yes. And for context, Julius II is not some gentle, quiet, pious figurehead.
No, they called him the warrior pope.
Exactly. He is aggressively rebuilding Rome from the ground up, demanding the absolute best from everyone around him. Yeah. And he wants this 25-year-old kid from Urbino to paint his private papal apartments.
The literal rooms where the Pope lives, works, and holds private meetings.
Yeah. And the context of that commission is what makes this era so legendary. At the exact same time Raphael is painting the walls of those private rooms, Michelangelo is painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel.
Wait, they are in the same building?
Literally steps away from each other.
That is insane.
You have two of the greatest creative geniuses in human history working simultaneously in the Vatican, unofficially competing for the absolute soul of the Renaissance.
Okay, let's unpack this rivalry, because this is where the psychology of our patient really starts to come into focus. Looking at our sources, Michelangelo notoriously claimed that everything Raphael knew about art he had learned from him.
Right, he was very vocal about that.
So I have to ask, was Michelangelo just being a bitter, jealous solo artist who resented this charming corporate CEO-type kid? Or was this a genuine mutual rivalry? Especially considering what Raphael actually painted in those papal apartments.
Oh, it was absolutely a genuine two-way street, and the art itself proves it. In his late 20s, Raphael finishes the frescoes in those apartments, including what becomes his ultimate masterpiece, the School of Athens.
Oh yeah, if you've ever taken an art history class, you've seen it.
Definitely. It's this vast, beautifully rendered classical hall filled with 58 ancient philosophers, scientists, and mathematicians, all debating and talking.
It's massive.
It visually represents the ultimate Renaissance humanist ideal. You know, the core belief that human reason, art, science, and theology can all perfectly coexist in harmony.
And he didn't just paint generic faces on these ancient figures, right? He used his actual contemporaries as the models.
He did, and he used them very pointedly. He paints Leonardo da Vinci as Plato, standing right in the center, pointing up to the heavens.
Okay.
But then down in the foreground, sitting on the steps, there is this brooding, hunched-over, isolated figure of the philosopher Heraclitus. He's wearing heavy boots, he looks exhausted, and he's entirely antisocial.
Let me guess.
Yep, that face is Michelangelo. Raphael literally painted his bitter rival into his monument to human greatness.
That's amazing.
Art historians still debate whether it was a respectful tribute to a fellow genius or, a highly calculated jab at Michelangelo's famous grumpiness.
Probably a bit of both.
Probably. And crucially, far on the right side of the painting, tucked among the crowds, Raphael paints himself. He is the only figure in the entire masterpiece breaking the fourth wall, looking directly out of the painting, making eye contact with you, the viewer.
It's such a massive flex. He's immortalizing himself right alongside Plato and Aristotle. But what you have to realize about the social dynamics of Rome at the time is that the city simply adored Raphael.
Oh, they loved
He
him.
was socially brilliant, he was charming, handsome, and he made everything look effortless. Meanwhile, Michelangelo was famously, notoriously difficult to be around. He preferred to work alone, covered in plaster dust, complaining about his back.
Right, but that effortless charm that Raphael projected was a complete facade. It was hiding an unimaginable workload.
How bad was it?
By the time Raphael is in his 30s, his daily life is staggering. He isn't just painting a canvas here and there. He is managing the ongoing decoration of the papal apartments. He's designing massive, complex tapestries for the Sistine Chapel.
Wow.
He's serving as the chief architect for St. Peter's Basilica, which is arguably the largest and most politically important construction project on the planet at the time.
That's a full-time job on its own.
Exactly. And importantly for our medical mystery later on, he is actively overseeing the physical excavation of ancient Roman ruins out in the city.
He's not just a guy in a smock holding a pallet. He's essentially running a Fortune 500 company in the 16th century.
Pretty much.
He has a workshop of over 50 assistants. The commissions from the wealthiest families in Europe are relentless. He is barely sleeping, and he's carrying the architectural and artistic weight of Rome squarely on his shoulders. He is burning the candle at both ends and in the middle.
His lifestyle was a physiological powder keg of stress and extreme exhaustion. I mean, the immune system can only take so much of that kind of punishment. It was just waiting for a spark to ignite it.
And that spark brings us to the sudden crash. The transition from this unstoppable, brilliant force to a dark, claustrophobic medical thriller. We are in late March of 1520.
Right.
Raphael is 36, just weeks away from his 37th birthday. Out of nowhere, he is struck down by a severe, violent fever. Now, given that immense workload we just talked about, getting sick isn't exactly surprising.
Yeah.
But the cause of what happens next changes medical and art history forever.
Because of his elite status, Pope Leo X, who had taken over after Julius II died, was terrified of losing his star architect.
Yeah.
So he sends the absolute best, most highly credentialed, most expensive physicians in Rome directly to Raphael's bedside.
To understand why the arrival of the best doctors in the world was actually a death sentence, we have to look at the 16th century medical consensus.
Yeah, this is key.
At the time, doctors operated on a framework called humorism. This was an idea that dated all the way back to ancient Greece. They didn't know about viruses or bacteria. They believed the human body operated on a delicate mechanical balance of 4 liquid humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile.
Illness simply meant those four liquids were out of proportion.
Exactly.
Imagine treating the human body like an overheated car engine. If a patient is running a dangerously high fever, the logical conclusion under the framework of humorism is that they have an excess of blood.
Too much fuel.
Right. The body is running too hot because there's too much fuel in the system. Therefore, the standard, universally accepted gold standard treatment was phlebotomy, bloodletting.
Digs.
You literally cut open a vein and drain the blood out of the patient to cool the engine down and vent the heat.
But here is where the story hinges on a massive fatal secret. Raphael's primary historical biographer, a man named Vasari, reveals that Raphael was actively hiding something from these top-tier papal doctors.
A huge omission.
Yeah. While he was managing this corporate-level empire by day, he had been making secret late-night visits across the city to see his mistress. She was a woman named Margherita Luti, widely known as the baker's daughter.
Right.
He was already physically decimated from his relentless workload, and he was spending his few hours of downtime sneaking around the cold streets of Rome. But when the doctors arrived at his bedside and asked for his medical history, he completely omitted this information. He lied by omission.
This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of medical diagnosis. Why did that specific omission matter?
Well, let's push back on this a little bit because as a modern reader, it seems like a bit of a stretch to blame the patient here. If bloodletting was the gold standard, the absolute consensus treatment for any fever in 15-20-12, wouldn't they have just drained his blood and killed him anyway?
That's a fair point.
Why does it matter at all if he told them about his late-night romantic rendezvous or his lack of sleep?
It matters because medicine, even deeply flawed 16th century medicine, relies on scaling the treatment to the perceived cause and the strength of the patient.
Oh, I see.
By hiding his extreme physical exhaustion and his secret nocturnal activities, Raphael denied his doctors the ability to accurately assess the fever's origin, or his true physical baseline.
So they didn't know how weak he was.
Right. They didn't know they were looking at a man whose immune system was already completely compromised by sheer physical and mental burnout. They assumed he had simply caught a sudden chill that caused a spontaneous humor imbalance.
So they are working completely blind. They think they are treating a strong, healthy 36-year-old with a random fever.
Exactly. They drastically misjudged the baseline resilience of their patient. So they apply the leeches or the lancet, they drain some blood, and they wait.
And when it doesn't work?
When the fever persists, their flawed logic tells them, the engine is still too hot. We simply haven't drawn enough blood. They aggressively and repeatedly escalated the bloodletting. They were fiercely overtreating a body that was already severely weakened, genuinely thinking they were doing exactly what the medical textbooks instructed them to do to save his life.
And what's amazing is that we don't just have to rely on a 500-year-old biography to guess at what happened inside his body. Because Raphael was so famous, the investigation into his death essentially never closed.
Never.
Let's look at the 500-year autopsy. Modern scientific forensics have recently stepped in to solve this historical cold case, looking at the exact physiological mechanics of his death.
Yeah, we have two major modern studies that paint a terrifying picture. In 2020, researchers from the University of Milan-Bicocca, publishing in conjunction with the Italian Society of Internal Medicine, formally reviewed all the historical symptoms and the timelines.
And what did they find?
Their conclusion was striking. Based on the progression of the fever, they determined that Raphael most likely contracted a severe case of pneumonia, but they were explicitly clear on one point: the pneumonia itself did not kill him.
The cure did.
Yes. When you have a severe lung infection like pneumonia, your body desperately needs white blood cells and high blood pressure to circulate those defenses to fight the infection.
So bleeding him was the worst thing they could do.
Absolutely. By repeatedly draining his blood, the doctors systematically destroyed his body's immune response and tanked his blood pressure. They sent him into hypovolemic shock. The treatment is undeniably what killed him.
But the true crime element of this story gets even more complex. Just this year, in 2026, the CDC's official journal, Emerging Infectious Diseases, published a brand new, highly anticipated study.
This is wild.
Researchers were actually granted permission to test ancient bone marrow samples taken directly from Raphael's tomb in the Pantheon. And inside that 500-year-old marrow, they found evidence of a specific bacteria called nocardia.
The presence of nocardia is absolutely fascinating from an epidemiological standpoint. Nocardia is an environmental pathogen. It is almost exclusively found in soil, dirt, or decaying organic matter. It usually infects the lungs when microscopic dust particles are inhaled.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if we put our detective hats back on, that detail doesn't immediately make sense.
Right.
Wait, a soil pathogen.
Yeah.
You just said nocardia lives in decomposing dirt, but our patient is arguably the wealthiest, most elite artist in Rome.
Yeah, he's living in absolute papal luxury.
Exactly. He's walking on pristine marble floors, dining with powerful cardinals, and painting in grand palaces. He's not a peasant farmer tilling the fields. How on earth does an environmental soil bacteria fit into the crime scene of a high society billionaire?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember a very specific, crucial detail we mentioned earlier about his staggering, multifaceted workload. Think about what Raphael was doing in his spare time when he wasn't painting.
Oh, the architectural project.
Yep.
He was overseeing the excavation of ancient Roman ruins out in the city. He was literally digging through ancient dirt.
Precisely. He wasn't just sitting in a pristine sunlit studio. He was routinely down in the actual dirt trenches. He was managing teams of laborers, digging up centuries-old masonry, actively breathing in huge clouds of dust from decomposing matter and ancient soil.
Wow.
The historical context of his daily life perfectly, flawlessly aligns with modern molecular pathology.
That is incredible.
But here is the tragic consensus of modern science. Regardless of whether the initial fever was sparked by a standard case of pneumonia or a rare nocardia infection inhaled from an archaeological dig, both the 2020 study and the 2026 study agree on one absolute undeniable fact.
Which is?
Neither disease would have killed a 36-year-old man that fast. The doctors, working blind because of his secret exhaustion and acting on flawed medical consensus, are the ones who relentlessly drained his life away.
It is deeply chilling. And the aftermath of his death is just as profound and theatrical as his life was. Raphael died on April 6, 1520. He was exactly 37 years old. But what really shook the city to its core was the eerie, almost supernatural timing of the calendar that year.
Yeah, April 6th, 1520 happened to fall exactly on Good Friday.
The day Christ died in the Christian tradition.
Yeah.
So the most beloved creator in Rome dies on exactly his 37th birthday, which also happens to be Good Friday.
The timing is unbelievable.
The entire city of Rome, from the peasants up to the aristocracy, treated this as a divine cosmic sign. The public mourning was immense and immediate.
Vasari records that when Pope Leo X received the news, the leader of the Catholic Church openly wept. The streets of Rome were packed with grieving cardinals, fellow artists, and thousands of ordinary citizens.
It was a massive event.
And perhaps most tellingly of all, the sources indicate that even his bitter rival, Michelangelo, was genuinely saddened by the loss.
We actually have proof of that from Michelangelo's inner circle. Sebastiano del Piombo, who was Michelangelo's closest ally and historically one of Raphael's fiercest critics, wrote a letter to Michelangelo just 4 days after the death.
What did he say?
Well, he didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate the removal of their biggest professional rival. He just wrote a very simple sentence. That poor fellow Raphael is dead. It completely strips away all the ego, all the professional jealousy, and leaves just this raw, universal human grief.
Because of his massive wealth from years of relentless papal commissions, Raphael left behind a huge estate. And he had actually secured his legacy by purchasing his own burial rights ahead of time in the Pantheon.
The magnificent ancient pagan temple with the giant oculus in the ceiling.
Exactly, which had been converted into a Christian church.
His tomb inscription was written by a famous humanist scholar named Pietro Bembo. It's carved right into the stone, and it reads, "Here lies Raphael, by whom nature feared to be outdone while he lived, and when he died, feared she would die too."
That is just towering.
Right, is the kind of towering, monumental praise you would expect for a grand patriarch who lived a long, full century, not a guy who burned out and died at 37.
And the imagery of his funeral is heartbreaking. As he lay in state, right beside his lifeless body, they placed his final, unfinished masterpiece, a massive painting called the Transfiguration. He had been desperately trying to finish it since 1516, between all his other massive projects.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this today? Beyond being a fascinating piece of true crime history, Raphael's death is a stark, urgent reminder of the extreme danger of having blind faith in whatever the current consensus happens to be.
Absolutely.
Just because every credentialed expert in the room agrees on a treatment doesn't mean the paradigm itself isn't fundamentally flawed. And more personally, on a day-to-day level, it is a reminder of the very real, tangible cost of withholding the truth from the people who are trying to solve your problems.
Yeah.
Your secrets, your omissions, your pride, they can inadvertently sabotage the very help you desperately need.
There is a final thought I want to leave you with, and it comes from looking closely at that unfinished painting that rested next to his corpse. The Transfiguration is a masterpiece, but it is profoundly, agonizingly ironic given how he died.
Oh, so.
Raphael personally painted the upper half of the canvas. It depicts Christ ascending into the air, radiant, peaceful, and entirely complete. But the lower half of the painting was left unfinished when he fell ill, and it had to be quickly completed by his assistants after his death.
Okay.
And what does that lower half depict? It shows a group of frantic disciples standing on the ground, completely unable to heal a sick, possessed boy while the divine presence is out of frame.
Wow. The disciples couldn't cure the boy.
Exactly. They placed a painting depicting a group of experts utterly failing to heal a child right next to the dead body of a man who the greatest doctors in the world were entirely unable to heal.
That is heavy.
It forces us to deeply consider the limits of human expertise. Even with unlimited wealth, absolute power, and the very best practices of the era, sometimes the experts are utterly powerless. We don't have all the answers.
Right.
And furthermore, perhaps it tells us something vital about true greatness. Maybe greatness isn't about perfectly finishing every single project yourself. Maybe it's about accepting that the lower half of the canvas, the messy, chaotic, unresolved world you leave behind, will always have to be finished by someone else. Nobody finishes it all.